Hey everyone, in today's video, I'm going to be putting 3 fast 135mm prime lenses head to head at a portrait photo shoot with the Sony A7IV. So today I have the Sony GM 135 f1.8, I have the Samyang 135 f1.8, and I have the Sigma 135 f1.8 DG HSM Art lens. So I want to try and shoot with like these blue flowers would be cool. So I have to be quite far back for this lens. So I'm going to start with like a mid-length shot, so I'll crop it like just under your dress there. During this first comparison, let's take a look at the physical differences of these lenses first. The Samyang 135 is the cheapest and lightest out of all three, weighing 772 grams. The Sony GM is the second heaviest, weighing 950 grams, but the most expensive. And finally, the Sigma 135 f1.8 is the heaviest at 1,130 grams, but comes in the second cheapest. All three lenses feature a focus range limiter switch. The GM and Sigma have an AF to MF switch, whereas the Samyang has a custom switch. The GM and the Samyang also have a focus hold button. The GM version is the only one to feature an aperture ring, which I personally really like having on my lenses as it frees up an extra button on the camera body that I can use as a shortcut for a different function. They all also have an 82mm filter thread. So here we have our first comparison images. I'll show you a side-by-side full view of the straight out of the camera images first, then a one-to-one view of the unedited photos so you can see all the details, and finally a full view of the edited photos too. And if you haven't yet, make sure you switch this video to watch it at 4K so you can see all the differences. In this next location, I'm taking mid-length close-ups at f2.8 with each lens, and I find that this is one of my favorite compositions with a 135mm lens. This focal length really shines for close-up portraits. One of the first things I noticed when taking a glance at all the images is that the GM has a cooler color cast straight out of the camera. I found it was really easy to edit the skin tones with a really neutral base to work with. The Samyang is on the other side of the scale where it has a very warm color cast to the photos. This can be a good thing though, especially if you shoot portraits. I think the warm color is very flattering. Finally, the Sigma sits in the middle with its color cast. It's not as cool as the GM and not as warm as the Samyang in my opinion. And again, I used all three lenses on the same camera body, so we have the exact same white balance and white balance fine adjustments for each shot. Looking at these three images here, there's no denying that all three lenses produce sharp, beautiful results. Each lens has a lot of clarity and detail in the skin texture, iris, eyelashes, but they all still look very flattering for portraits. Ooh, that looks so cool there. I wish it was like a lemon tree or something. While you are able to get good and sharp results from all three lenses, how you get there is another story that can determine what each lens can be used for. In these full body shots here, Kira's face is filling up a very small portion of the frame, and we have a lot going on which can help show which lens performs better in trickier photography situations. As you can see from the picture-in-picture, IAF was performing well on the day and was sticky on Kira's eye and face throughout all the scenarios we shot in with all the lenses. However, I found that the GM was the most consistent when it came to autofocus performance and accuracy. When looking through all the final photos to select images to edit, the GM had the most amount of photos with critical focus. The Samyang comes in second for me in terms of autofocus performance. Even when IAF or the focus point is on the subject and I'm getting a few photos in a row with critical focus, I found that the Samyang tends to slip focus here and there. In saying that, I think this lens still has good enough focus accuracy that it will perform well in most situations that you put it through. Lastly, we have the Sigma. I found that this Sigma has a lot of potential with autofocus performance. The only thing letting it down is the fact that it is a DG HSM lens, meaning it's adapted from Canon. Because of that, I did notice that it struggled the most out of all three lenses to get focus. I'm really looking forward to seeing if Sigma will make a DG DN version of this lens, because I have a feeling it's going to be a really great lens. In these full body comparison photos is the only time I think the GM sharpness really stands out compared to the other two lenses. The Samyang and Sigma have a very similar sharpness. With the rest of the photos in this photo shoot, and especially the close-up portraits, it's a lot harder to tell the lenses apart. Now I'm going to take close-up portraits wide open at f1.8 for each lens. I picked this spot to shoot in because we have some very glary backlight to work with, and something that I mention in my lens review videos is that I don't always pick the most ideal spots to shoot in, as I want to see how lenses and camera bodies will perform in the worst situations. As photographers, we don't always have the luxury of shooting with perfect golden hour sunsets, as much as I would love that, so it's good to know how a lens will perform when it's bright and sunny, or when it's overcast and dark, or when you are shooting in a tricky location with lots of dappled light, for example. Okay, beautiful. Again, in this spot, I had similar autofocus ratios as I mentioned before. I had the most in-focus photos to choose from with the GM, then the Samyang, and finally the Sigma. Unlike the full body shots though, when you look at the close-up comparison images here, it is so difficult to tell the images apart, so I do want to play a little game. This time I've switched up the order of the images and just labeled them with numbers. I'll give you a few seconds to take a look at the full shots, and then we'll take a look at the one-to-one view. Let me know if you can guess which one was taken on which lens. Okay, ready? I will reveal in 3, 2, 1. Did you get it right? Let me know in the comments which ones you got right or wrong. I also took another close-up portrait with each lens in portrait orientation as well, as I really liked what this spot looked like. I enjoyed shooting with all three lenses, and at the end of the day, I was happy with the photos that all three produced. I think if you're a photographer who doesn't work in high-pressure environments, any of these are a fine choice to do photography with, as you can get great and sharp results from each of these lenses. If you already own one of these 135 primes, unless your client base or your photography subject changes, I don't think there's a huge reason to run out and replace it, as the final results are very similar. One of the main differences we have is the weight. I do love that the Samyang is a very light lens, and this is something that I can definitely feel when I'm out taking photos. I also think you are getting very good value for money if you go for the Samyang 135 f1.8. And of course, another big difference between these lenses is the performance. If you work in slower photography environments, say you do landscapes or portrait sessions, I think any of these lenses will be able to handle those situations. If you start moving on to do sports or maybe wedding photography, then the cost versus performance is something that will be more important to keep in mind. For example, I use a 135 the most for my wedding photography. I usually rely on it a lot, especially during the ceremony, to capture people walking down the aisle, reactions to speeches, and the first kiss. So for that reason, I do want a lens I know I can rely on to get the photo, even if I only have one chance to capture it. Also, the GM is the only lens that has the ability to shoot up to 30 FPS if you're using a camera like the A1. I also took an extra bokeh example from a tripod. All three lenses have very round bokeh in the center of the frame, and they all form more of an eye shape towards the edges and corners. The bokeh from all the lenses is very clean as well. So that is all I have for today's comparison video between these three 135mm lenses. I'd love to know what you think of the photos down in the comments below. Is there a lens that you prefer the most and for what reason? But otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I make new videos every single week, so I will see you all next time. Bye.